Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 152 of the podcast. In this episode, I talk with Brittany Compton, who oversees preschool strategy with Orange. So if you use Orange curriculum, you're going to want to listen to this. If you don't use Orange curriculum, you're going to want to listen to this episode because we talk all about preschool ministry and how does that work, especially younger kids. You know, what does a healthy ministry look like for preschoolers, but, you know, nursery, toddler age, you know, before they're even old enough maybe in your church to use curriculum. But we do talk about what does curriculum look like in those younger years. And she goes through what the Orange preschool curriculum is built on, like what are the pieces, the key pieces to it and how they connect to each other and progress. But again, you don't have to use the curriculum to benefit from that because you can think about your own curriculum and what you do and how it applies and how you can use that in your rooms. You can get all the show notes and links at nickblevins.com/episode 152. Starting a few weeks ago, I began emailing about every new episode, and in the email, I give you something exclusive that's not found in the post. And in this email for this week, I'm going to give you our preschool ministry volunteer job description. So if you're interested in that, go to the show notes, nickblevins.com/episode 152. Like I mentioned, look for the form there where you can subscribe to get those emails so that you get this exclusive content when it comes out. And I also want to let you know it's the last chance to take part in our webinar this week. So if you're listening to this when it comes out, it's this Thursday, June 27th, about empowering volunteers to lead like staff. So volunteer coaches, that whole idea. We're going to talk about that in the webinar. You can sign up for that at ministryboost.org/webinars. Let's go ahead now and jump into my conversation with Brittany Compton about preschool ministry. Today I'm talking with Brittany Compton. Welcome to the podcast, Brittany.
Hi, Nick. How's it going?
Doing well. How are you?
Great. Just enjoying the start of summer here in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. In what is the last day of May that we're recording? So that's just different. You know what I mean? Have you ever heard how John Acuff will say the South doesn't do summer right because they get out so early and then kids are back in school like in August and it's still really hot? I don't know if you feel that way, but I've heard him say that. And he's from the Northeast, kind of like me too. So I can relate to him. I can, like if I were in school in August up here, it'd be pretty awful.
It's very strange for me because I came from Detroit, north of Detroit. So yeah, it's still spring here. Or to me, you know, you don't go back to school till after Labor Day, but the kids start August 1st, in which it is still fully summer. Yeah. So it is kind of weird. He's right.
Well, maybe I was going to say maybe he just has that Northeast. See, up here, if you were out in May and early June, it's like it's warm. I mean, today it's probably, I don't know, 88 or something. But like warm enough to swim, not exactly. You know what I mean? So it makes sense for it to be later up here. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Orange. Maybe even like you know what you were doing before you came to work on staff at Orange.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I've served ministry. Volunteered as a small group leader, large group leader, from the time I could. So, and preschool always was my favorite, but I was on staff at a church, for 11 years and it was multi-site. So right about the year after I started, we started expanding. And so we, started churches through plants or mergers. And so such a dynamic, diverse group of churches we had, between small churches, large churches, ones that met in schools, so portable. We had a couple urban locations. And so it was a lot of fun to take some of that experience after 11 years leading specifically preschool ministry for a while and then children's ministry at large for a while, and taking that. And now at Orange, I am the director of preschool strategy. So I oversee the preschool curriculum first look, as well as the music we produce for preschool, videos, the preschool breakouts for Orange, just all the fun stuff to help preschool ministry, help them do it great, and support leaders.
That's awesome. So, and when did you make that move?
Yeah, good point. I moved down to Atlanta 3 years ago, got married and then moved. We kind of did everything at once. And so it's been 3 years in the sunny South. It's been a lot of fun. My husband actually grew up in the South, so he's a Tuscaloosa, Alabama boy. So Roll Tide, I've learned all the fun of football in the South. And one of my favorite parts of our wedding, we had 16 preschoolers, and decided that I had been in a lot of weddings. We've done the wedding thing for years. And what would be more fun than having a traditional bridal party was to have a whole bunch of kids in our wedding. So my favorite part is when you see like kids rolling down the stairs throughout the service, and just like and just like in every good Sunday morning when the pastor goes really long and the kids are getting antsy, and we had told the pastor, like, hey, short and sweet, like we're just ready to get married here. And in the mid-time, he's going kind of long, and like mid-service, this one little girl, she goes up and she's like tugging on my dress, and she's like, hey, are we done yet? Like, are you married, Miss Brittany? And I'm like, almost. Let's get this. So it was just such a fun day, and nothing better than those little girls thinking the day was just all about them, which I love sharing the limelight. So it was really great.
That is funny. I mean, it's pretty bold to do that. I don't know from what it'd be like as the bride, but I imagine kids as ring bearers is already probably one of the most stressful things, as you're playing, because it's the most unpredictable. And then you just added more to it. That's awesome.
Totally. And it was great. It was fun, very unique, and just a joyful, great day. So we did that 3 years ago, May 7th. So, and then I've been just loving working with the First Look team and the Orange team and creating great curriculum and resources for people. So it's been a fun few years.
And obviously you think preschool ministry is important, and most people listening right now do too, but I'd love to hear you talk about why you think it's important, and maybe there'll even be a different lens on it now from, like, you thought that as a leader in preschool ministry in a church, and now you get to see it helping equip churches. You may even have another picture or thought or your perspective on that. So tell us about why you think preschool ministry is important.
Well, I saw the greatest quote the other day. Nobel Prize-winning economist James Heckman says that the highest monetary return on investment comes before children even start preschool or start school. And that is, the more a society spends on its youngest citizens, the more it earns back over time by helping prepare kids for self-sufficient lives. And I just love that. Like, that just says it all right there. Like, the more we invest in those very first, very early years, we're going to set kids up for success to have greater lives as adults. I also think that preschool ministry is so important. And when I say preschool ministry, I think birth through like 5 years old or through pre-K, about entering kindergarten. And a lot of times this is when you get parents coming back to church after maybe they've taken some time off because they've got this new bundle of joy, and they're just a little bit overwhelmed. And they're like, hey, I want to give this small human the best possible life there is. And they're out there and they're doing research, right? They're looking for the best schools and the best doctors and the best childcare. And so while they're doing that, they also start looking for the best church. And so knowing that those first nurseries and toddler rooms and 2-year-old rooms are kind of your gateway door back into your church. And you also have this kind of unique opportunity because you've got this new baby that everybody's so excited about, and not just these two parents, but the aunts and the uncles and the grandparents. So I feel like when you invest in those preschool years, you actually have this great influence into their whole entire family because everybody is so invested in this new little person. And so those are the years that you really want to make the best because you're showing kids and parents what church is and who God is, and that's the way we treat them and the way we greet them and the way we communicate and help support them in their new journey as parents. Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about like younger preschool ministry age. And it's good that you clarified preschool. Like, we call our ministry preschool, and we mean babies all the way up through pre-K. A lot of churches will call preschool just the older part, 4 and 5 years old or whatever. But let's talk about younger kids, ministry to babies, toddlers, 2-year-olds, and their families. What does a healthy ministry look like there?
Yeah, I think that's the part where we're saying, like, we want to start right off the bat with these precious little kids, and that's starting communication with your parents. So letting them know that you are on the same team and you're there to support them. And part of that might be providing them with resources or events and times of just train them or to encourage them and let them know that they're really doing a great job as they may feel like they're not. And I always feel like the world is negative enough. And right now with Pinterest and social media, parents are kind of feeling like failures, right? If their cake doesn't look like that perfect unicorn or whatever. And so whatever we can do to tell parents that, hey, you know what, you're here, you're doing a great job, and we're here to partner with you. So you're laying that foundation so that by the time that they get to kindergarten, third grade, that they already are kind of used to the rhythm of doing activities at home or having faith talks throughout the day, praying with their children. So if we can model that and help them learn to start doing that right from the start, it's just going to become part of their natural rhythm and routine and grow with them and their kids throughout life. I also think you said, what does a healthy ministry look like? And I think something that's unique to say, but consistent leaders in those early years in the nursery, in your toddler's rooms, because I really think, as important as it is to have a consistent leader in the life of a third grader, fifth grader, it's really scary for a baby toddler to go into a room with a new person, a new face every week. And I love the example that Orange often uses with Santa Claus. And if you ever see a picture of a preschooler with Santa, generally they're screaming, trying to get away, crying.
We have such pictures.
I wondered.
Yeah.
And maybe you're sitting there with Santa and you really don't want to either. But, we perceive Santa as the nicest man in the world, jolly, happy. But because preschoolers only see him once a year, he's a total stranger. And so I think that's just such a great picture to say why it's important for that preschooler to see a consistent face in their room every week. And then the other thing that I find so interesting is that a stranger actually will only understand 50% of what a toddler says. And that's one more reason why you want a consistent leader, because if it's a stranger, if it's somebody that's just coming in once every few weeks, they are not going to understand anything that this little guy says, right? Because we know that it's hard enough to understand a toddler when they're learning and developing their language skills. And so if you don't see them very often, that's just going to be even harder to connect with the kid and to be able to teach them. I saw a great example of this. Like some grandparents went to pick up their probably about 2-year-old one week and was shocked, or maybe they were dropping him off because they were shocked that Mr. Joe understood everything that their little grandson had just said. And the grandparents were like, we've been with him all morning and we have no idea what he's been saying. And Mr. Joe knew exactly what he was saying. But that's because Mr. Joe shows up in this kid's life every single week. Mm-hmm. And so I just think that, it's so important that they feel already that church is a place for them to belong, where they matter.
Yeah. I want to hear more about like even first look curriculum with Orange and what that looks like in the younger years. But let's save that because we're going to talk a little bit more about the curriculum. And before we get to curriculum, let's talk about environments a little bit. So we're talking about the importance of this for new families. And in many ways, it's a lot of times, like you said, their first time back to church, or even if they've been a part of your church, when they have their first child, it's their first experience with children's ministry. So What are some helpful tips when it comes to environments for preschool?
Well, I think the first thing to look for when you're in environments is safety, for two reasons. A child is looking to see if they are safe, if that's a good place for them. No matter what, it's amazing, but preschoolers, all people love boundaries and want to feel safe in the place that we're taking them to. But also, we know that parents are looking for safety. Just as I was saying, they're looking for that doctor that's the best. They're looking for an environment that's safe. So making sure that the toys are not broken, that everything is, the plugs are all covered, that the doors, there's an adequate safety in and out, and security. Especially this day and age, they're just looking to make sure that you are a very safe place for their child. And then I think it's just kind of a funny thing, but I think for a preschool environment to win, just to make sure that you have several of the same toy. I looked it up because I was curious, and really a child does not completely understand sharing until about age 5, which is amazing because we talk about it all the time, and a lot of times we just say the word share. Well, and
it makes sense that they don't understand.
They don't even know what it means. And there's a show, I think Daniel Tiger, I think he's breaking ground trying to help kids understand this, but truly developmentally it's like age 5. So because of that, let's not have just one really cool red fire truck. Like, make sure you have several, like a box of trucks and cars, if that's one of the items that you're going to pull out for kids to play with, just because you only have 1 hour. And so you just don't want to have anything that's going to cause an extra problem. You don't want to take care of problems in an hour. You want to teach these kids.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
The other thing that I've learned is to just kind of do a little bit of research before you paint your rooms and find a color palette that's good. There are a couple of colors that actually tend to irritate children. And again, in that 1 hour, you don't want a whole bunch of irritated 2-year-olds. So you don't want red and yellow walls. And it's just kind of funny because you're just trying to paint them and make them look beautiful or pretty or match your color scheme. But sometimes the muted colors work better. So just taking the time to research just how it feels when you walk into your room. And a trick that I've used is to get an outsider, especially even a non-churched person, to come and walk through your halls and let them tell you what they see. Because they're going to see something that you may not, like that old ficus tree that's been in the corner forever that's, all dusty, that parents might just be turned off by, or, just the little things where they might notice something that's been broken that you're like, well, it's been broken the whole time I've been at this church, 10 years. But, it's just kind of those things that like open your eyes to just what's noticed when you walk in and out. And then of course, signage, right? We want to make sure that people can get to and from all those rooms and check-in stations with ease, because it's already hard enough to come into church lugging a toddler, and they're already stressed out just from getting in and out of the car seat and getting dressed that day. So, and they probably haven't eaten any breakfast. So just trying to make it as easy as possible for people to come to church.
Yeah, that's a good tip. I think it's probably rare actually that I see a church that has good signage. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things where like you don't think about it because you know everything is. And I've heard, it's not in church world, but somewhere else I heard like just when you think you have too many signs or, something like that, you might just have enough. You know what I mean? Like you probably need more.
That is such a good point.
One of those things, because it's like every direction and all that. That's a good point. And I always, this is probably even more true when your kids are younger, but our kids' welcome team, one of the things I always say to them is, if you pay attention, you'll see that when they get like 10 feet from the check-in table, there's just a confused look on their face because like the signs have pointed them there, but they're not sure what's next and they're nervous. And you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you'd be more like that with a younger kid than you would an older kid. You'd be a little more confident and a little less concerned, if your kid's 8 or something, than if you've got the baby with you. So that's important. That's good.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
Oh, no, you've hit it dead on. I mean, if it's already been such a stressful morning to get there, you want the most smiley, most friendly person standing at that welcome desk just to set them at ease and let them know that they made it. And, hey, we're going to help you from here out, that they're in the right place.
Well, let's dive into a little bit of the First Look curriculum and the structure of it, but also, and I don't know how you want to weave this in, you'll know this better than me, but I'd love to hear about the difference in different age groups. You and I were talking before we recorded about like how it works at our church and what we do with it. And for a lot of churches edit curriculum, some churches over edit curriculum, some probably don't edit enough. I worked with a church one time where with 252, they were just giving it to leaders like Sunday school and like the whole thing, large group.
That's overwhelming.
Yeah, oh yeah. They were like, and I'm there to do a training and like half of them look like they want to kill me. And I'm like, what is wrong? I don't understand. And then like as we're digging in, I'm like, oh, now I get it. Yeah, you probably do want to kill me because I'm championing this curriculum that is really hard for you because you're doing everything. So I'm sure there's churches all over, but I'd love to hear about the curriculum, like, the very intentional structure you have to it, and then how it's different across these ages in the preschool phase. All
right. Well, yeah, you hit it dead on. Like, first and foremost, when we create curriculum, we give churches and leaders a lot of resources, a lot of words to read. So that definitely would be extremely overwhelming to just hand it all to a small group leader. It's made to be edited, right? Like, because there's a variety of churches using it. And you and I were talking about how even working with a multi-site church, for me, it looked a little bit different at each campus because each campus looked a little bit different. So it's important to edit it, to fit your needs, but we definitely provide a ton of stuff because we've all been there. We've all been church leaders, and we know that you want to spend time investing in your small group leaders, in your coaches, in your great team, and you don't have time to do too much. So that's why we love to provide the extra things like the volunteer appreciation and art and signage and signs to tell parents that there might be an allergy alert. Just the little things I love that First Look does, just to care for the leaders, the parents, and just to create a well-rounded ministry. But you're right. We break the curriculum down. So it is by age group. So you can have it, you can pull up the just for babies. There's toddlers, extended toddlers, 2s, and then 3s to 5s. And in the 2s and the 3s to 5s, we break it down into like 7 segments. And we start with what we call the prelude, but it's really that awesome time to set the tone for the whole day. So it's what your environment looks like, how you're going to, decorate that day, the music playing in your hallways, all the great things that we know we want to do before people walk in on Sunday mornings. And then we jump into social activities. So when the kids first get dropped off into your room, we have basically, again, they're kind of like small group activities, but we call them social activities. And this time is actually super important for preschoolers because the activities that we create and we intentionally choose are there to teach preschoolers new words and concepts. So we know that preschoolers are developing their language skills. And because of that, we need to teach them certain words that we might be using in the lesson later that day. So kind of like if you're going to teach about Hagar and her son in the desert, and you want to move on about how God heard them, but you're going to lose them when you say the word desert because most preschoolers have not been to a desert, don't know what a desert is unless they live in one, right? So that's a great time to we pull out the sand table and we're going to play with the sand and some little people and explain what a desert is, and that today in our Bible story, we're going to hear this. And so I think that's another key part for First Look is that we provide the words to say for each and every activity. And the words are so important because they connect the activity in a very, very concrete way for a preschooler to understand. And it's that connection piece. So we're not just playing. So when a parent drops a kid off, it might look like they're playing some really fun games and activities, but each activity has such a great purpose in teaching preschoolers a great big truth that we want them to learn. So that's kind of the beginning part, is just to make sure that we are introducing the preschoolers and preparing them for what they're going to learn, because it is just so important that they build their vocabulary a little bit so that they have a greater understanding of what we want to teach. Mm-hmm. And then we jump into our large group time, which involves worship and story. And we do, because good preschool music is hard to find. I don't know what you've used with your kids, but music that doesn't drive parents and leaders crazy is sometimes a challenge. So we've really worked hard to create some new albums in the last several years to help support that. So something that parents might want to listen to in their cars, but also great music to use in your large group time. So we develop music that's going to tie in the basic truths that God made me, God loves me, and Jesus wants to be my friend forever. And then with simple hand motions and actually whole body motions, so kids can jump and shout and clap and spin around while they're worshiping, because worship for a preschooler looks so different than worship for an adult, which again is why we work so hard to make sure that kids feel that when they come to church, that we're making sure that they are in a place that is designed for them, that they feel like church is for them. If you put a preschooler in the main service, they are going to be bored and check out because it's not designed for them. And so it's a great time to say that, hey, you know, at church, this is a place for you and you can worship God in your own way. And so we want to make sure we give kids that great opportunity and then dive into story. And that's when we want to teach the Bible story. And then with First Look, we do offer a variety of ways. So it could be on a stage, it could be in a small rug setting. And again, this is why like you really want to take a time to dive in or meet with your Orange specialist. This is a great extra person that you get with the curriculum that helps you just in ministry in general, but understand what you have in front of you. But in addition, we have these wonder videos. And it was funny that you mentioned John Acuff. So today he was posted a picture of him with like an owl on his shoulder.
Oh, yeah. I saw
Did
that.
you see this post?
Yeah,
and this preschooler's like, hey, I know him. And the parent was like, how do you know John Acuff? And the kid responded with, no, the owl. That's Ollie. That's Ollie the owl. And so we've been teasing John a little bit because Ollie's pretty famous. But
yes, that's true.
we do a video lesson too that people can use. And it's a great version for preschoolers to understand. And I love it so much that I even say it's like a bonus lesson that you could even use again if you have like time at the end of your hour with kids, because it's just a great lesson that kids connect with. And it's also on the Parent Q app, so kids can watch it all week long. And we know how much preschoolers love repetition and how much they're going to watch Frozen all week long.
Yep.
And so
we would watch it in the car. Like when my son was 3, 4, and he was seeing Ollie, we would just play it, Monday, Tuesday after church in the car, and he loved it. So, and for me, of course, it'd be the first time seeing it, so it wasn't quite to the Frozen, 57th time point. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Oh, that's great. Even though you could probably sing along with Ollie by the end of the week.
Yeah. But the story part, would be new, and it was funny. He that, like you said, that age, they love the repetition. So he loved that. Before we move on too, I want to ask you a question that came up as you were talking about that. I think my experience working with churches tells me, and I could be wrong, that a vast majority of them don't do a large group experience for preschool. Could you just take a side tangent and tell us why you think that matters?
Yes, it totally matters because, again, we said we're creating an opportunity for church to be real for kids, for preschoolers. So just as adults need corporate worship, so do preschoolers. And we are, again, we're laying the foundation. So we're showing them what large group looks like for them now at age 3 and 4. And then it's going to look a little bit different, but similar when they get older grades, right? And it's going to look a little different, but similar as they grow into middle school and high school and adulthood. So it's just you want to start right now. And I think what's awesome is working with churches. I've seen people that have done a large group worship time for babies. And that just blew me out of the water when I saw it. But it worked. They would, kind of gather up all the babies and walked to an empty room that they had where they played the same 3 worship songs every single week. And then they actually watched the Ollie video because some of the kids just really connected and loved seeing that animated owl up on the screen. And then they would go back to their room. And I just thought how fun that they've even given as young as their, I think they were like 9 months old in this room, just praising Jesus with their little baby hands. And, they just loved the music and the excitement. But, and it depends on what your environment looks like. You may not have a whole separate space, and that's okay. But just kids need a chance to, I would say even if you can mark it off with a rug, just know that this is the space where we're going to sing and we're going to worship, we're going to praise, we're going to dance, and we're going to hear a story from the Bible that's true. And just giving, again, that routine, that repetition for a preschooler to know that this is what this time is for, whether it's your rug space, so it's your rug time, or if it's when they go down to a large group room. Or did you say you guys have the Clubhouse? Is yours designed like a Clubhouse?
It is, yeah. In fact, I should know this, but my preschool director says some of the details of the First Look video have changed since we, our whole preschool space. The walls and everything were painted and designed like the video. So like the green hills and the blue skies, all that. And,
yes.
and then when you get to the oldest age of preschool, like 3, 4 years old, it is a clubhouse. And she'll even now, she didn't used to do this, but now our preschool director will even decorate a little bit by theme too. So whatever the theme is, you guys are going to power up this summer. It'll, have a little bit of that flair too. And it's great. Kids love it. I mean, I love it. It's just a great look. And of course, the stage is like, 5 inches high. So kids want to get on there all the time. I remember the year it was like the music theme or whatever. And we had like, like fake band, instruments and stuff. And kids would get up there and play, during the free time.
Yes. Well, do you know what? I think that was the theme we called Kids Rock. And
yes, that was it. Yeah.
Again, whatever we can do to set kids up to win and let them feel that they matter and that they are successful in their church setting. So having that stage where they actually could stand on, that's a huge win and letting them perform because again, this is church for them. And I love it. But the other thing that you just mentioned when you said that there was a stage, and even though it's just, a couple inches off the ground, what that also does is that sets a boundary. And we talked about how kids need to feel safety and just to have boundaries. And so that's kind of where you also to say, okay, you cannot get on the stage if that's where, your large group teacher is. And it just kind of helps them feel like, okay, so this is where I sit when I hear the story, and this is where I stand and dance when I hear the music. And they just want to know. They just want to know where they can be, where they can't be. And then they get to express themselves and have a great time. But yeah, large group worship is just so much fun with preschoolers too. It's way more fun than adult worship because you will see things that you would never see in the main auditorium.
Sure. And it has, we didn't do it out the gate when our church was started 13 years ago. But we did it pretty shortly after. So it's been a long time now. And it does help prepare them for elementary too. Like there's enough of a change in elementary. Bigger stage, lights. It's darker when we worship. There's video screen, like multiple screens. Like it's just, there's a lot, there's more kids, it's just a lot different. And it's nice now. For years now, having a large group in preschool, the transition isn't as hard. Like they're kind of used to it. It just looks a little different.
Exactly. And so it makes kindergarten not such a scary transition because while they won't see Ollie the owl, they're still going to have that same kind of the same routine, right? You're going to come into a large space and we're going to sing some songs and we're going to hear a great Bible story and we're going to pray, like they kind of already have that routine. So it's a little more familiar and they're able to transition just a little bit better. So, that's right. That's our goal is we want kids to come for their preschool years to build that foundation so that then they can grow in their knowledge in the elementary years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, thanks. I wanted to take a little tangent there because I thought about that. I thought, actually, I don't think that's very, very common. So it's good.
Mm-hmm. Well, and when you mention the word transitions, that's actually another part of the First Look curriculum because transitions for a preschooler, for any human, but for preschoolers in particular, are so important because, again, it's a little bit scary to just move from one activity to the next, or they don't really want to quit playing in the sand table. So it's using these same cues or transitions to help the child move from one activity to the next. And that also helps open up their brain capacity to learn. So especially if we're transitioning from our social activities into our Bible story time, we want kids to be ready to learn and to hear everything that they can. And so by using a transition where it might be a song or a movement or even the same phrase you use each week, it's going to help the kids cue themselves and be ready and not be scared or anxious about what's coming next. So, like a kid at school, if they're scared, they can't learn, right? Their brains kind of shut down. Same thing with, with the kids at church when we're transitioning from, and so even if it's from preschool to kindergarten, or if it's from, Bible story time back to small group time, just letting them know that, hey, you're safe and this is what we're going to do. And we're going to move to the next activity just helps give you a more successful and impactful time with these kids. Mm-hmm. So that is one other part. And then we do have the final, like the small groups where we do a lot of Bible story review, memory verse review, journal and prayer time. And I love journal and prayer time for preschoolers because even at age 3 or the younger ones, when you open up a little journal and you ask them what they want to pray for, and no matter what they say, if it's the craziest thing, or it could be like a very real serious thing, and you write it down in the journal, I always say with a super fun pen, it just shows these preschoolers how important their prayer requests are to God. And they do matter. And so I love that even just starting right at those early years, showing them that they can pray, they can talk to God, and whatever they have to say matters. And again, those can be the most entertaining little prayer journals to flip through, or the most like sad or real or surreal, because you're like, wow, this is what, this 3-year-old or 4-year-old is dealing with in life. And so, it's such a cool piece to always make sure that you do take that moment to open it up and jot it down and be able to, again, make each preschooler feel like they belong and that they matter to God and to your church. So we do that. We wrap up with lots of activities. I know you mentioned earlier too, we give a ton of activities, and we obviously don't intend for you to use all of them in your 1 hour on Sunday morning. So you're going to choose the ones that are best for your environment. But we also know that you may have Wednesday night programming or Thursday morning programming. And so, again, it's better to keep that same message going all week long. And so you can use some of the activities and keep that same Bible story and message and bottom line for the preschoolers so they can continue to grow in their understanding. Again, they probably would watch Ollie every day, but we have such a variety of ways of teaching it that you can tell that story 3 different ways that week for those kids, but they'll continually hear the bottom line and understand better and better that story. So that's why you have so many activities, and of course you can't get to all of them. And then the very final piece, which I know you believe strongly in and you've talked about on many podcasts, but just the home part and how we want to partner with parents. So giving them the resources to take home and continue to teach that same lesson, the same bottom line with kids. And I don't know how familiar or how long it's been since you've done them, but I love the preschool ones because they are like things to do during bath time and things to do during your cuddle time and during your meal time, like times when you actually have intentional moments with your preschoolers. And they're just simple activities or questions or things to do that, again, allows you to have some of those faith talks at home. And so many times, preschool parents are a bit overwhelmed anyway. And then you say, hey, we want you to have these great big faith talks with your kids. And they just kind of look at you like you're foreign and you have they don't know how to do it. And so when you're like, well, here's a resource and here's a couple of things to do this week. And it's just try one of them. And it starts to help, again, build that rhythm and that routine, but let them know that you can use any time to have a faith talk with your kids. And then knowing that that's going to grow with them into their elementary years and middle school years. It's just awesome to see how this will impact and how it does impact the next generation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love how the Parent Cue, the app and even the resources you hand out, they're kind of like the curriculum where they're like, say this, do this, remember this. It's just very clear. You know what I mean? I love that. And actionable, Yeah,
it just makes it so, doable. It's not hard. We're not going to ask you to go research or find supplies that you may never find. It's just things that you can do at home in your normal everyday routine.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So
that's a good overview of the different segments and all that stuff. And
yeah.
Did you want to say any more about the different ages of that or how it can look different there?
Yeah, so that's kind of that's the way that I would really structure a morning for a 2 to 3 to 5 year old. But of course, when you're in your infants and toddlers room, it looks very different, but we still want to do something. And so if it's, we try to keep it very simple, like tape this over your changing table to cue the leader that while you're changing the diaper, to say this to the baby and to pray this over them. And then you can put this cute little sticker on their diaper that's going to say that, they were changed, but also that God made them. Mm-hmm. And just to continually communicate that, just starting from babies. And then in the toddlers, there's a couple of options, but one piece of our curriculum, you can just hang on the wall and leave it up for the month. And again, it cues the leader. So whoever's in there can just look at the wall and say, okay, we're going to play with the ball today and we're going to sing this song, or we're going to play Ring Around the Rosie, but we're going to sing these different words that are going to teach them that they were made by God and that God loves them and that they're special. And it's just a great time to use. I mean, you have an hour with these kids, and so we want to make the most of it. And so we still have a memory verse and a Bible story and a bottom line for each age group. And of course, it's simplified for toddlers and for our infants because they are not doing as much as our older preschoolers are, but it's still important to start and to do something because they hear you and they are so impressionable, right? I mean, we know that infants and toddlers are growing at an amazing rate. And if they're learning, 50 to 100 new vocabulary words this year, I mean, how great would it be if their vocabulary word was Jesus loves me, and that we can help start to influence and shape their lives, and that they grow up knowing that they were made wonderful and they were made by God, and that God has a plan for them. And I mean, we want to start that right away. So yeah, I mean, when you break it down, there's a lot of pieces, which is why I definitely say, like, get your orange specialist on call and find out what's going to work best for your church and your environment. One other thing that we've added in the last 2 years is we actually do preschool family experiences. And I think the other, and it's offered like once a quarter. So at 4 times a year, because we know churches are busy and parents are busy, but these are opportunities to invite preschoolers and their parents back into your environment. I think like a Saturday at 10 a.m., before nap time, but kind of in their prime when they've got the most energy. And you invite the preschoolers, their parents in, you do some activities with them. But again, it's just one of those opportunities to connect with the parents, but also to model how we teach and talk about faith with preschoolers. And first of all, it's a lot of fun, and it's opening up the doors of your church and showing them that, again, church is a great place to be, but also using the moments to teach while we're playing, and to teach while we're doing a craft, and to teach while we're having a snack, and just to shape the words, and then just to show the parents that, hey, you can do this too. So if you weren't sure how to do it when I handed this little sheet home and I sent the paper home, here, come back on Saturday and I'm going to show you how we do it.
Yeah, that's good. That's really helpful. I think that's needed. One of the things that I think our preschool director has done that's, I thought, been really helpful too, and it kind of goes back to the large group thing, is like as they get older, so 2 to 3, there's like she almost adds pieces of the large group in each age group. So at 2 years old, like at toddlers, there, like you said, there's things in the room that you can say, and there's music they'll play, and so there's a lot of that. But there's no video, there's no Ollie, whatever. And then by the time they're not in our oldest preschool room with that large group stage and large group experience, but they're a year younger than that, so like 2, 2.5, whatever. They'll watch the Ollie video, but that's all they'll do. You know what I mean? Like, and they'll even maybe play music, but it's not like it's worship together. And it's been kind of cool how, like, as they get older, they get more and more of it. And she even does like the summer. So like now, coming up on now, the summer before kids would move up to the oldest age and be in the room with her, they start coming over to experience it in the summer as like a little preview or whatever.
Sounds like she transitions really, really well.
Yeah, I think she does. And you and I were talking before at the call. Part of it is she's got a great volunteer who did preschool stuff for the county, before she retired. And so together they just do a great job thinking about the transitions and the elements and, I don't know, all of the age and phase type stuff that helps you, teach this well. They do that pretty well. But I just want to say that because some people that might even be a way you could get to doing a large group is you start it by doing this little piece, and then 3 months from now you add that, and and a year from now you've got a full preschool large group. Like, that would be pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that's so wise, Nick, because I think too people get very overwhelmed. Or like, I can't do a large group for preschool and elementary. Yeah. Well, hey, preschoolers are pretty non-judgmental. Okay, they're game. So if you just put the Ollie video in for the week, that's a win, right? Or if you just do one worship song because you have it on a DVD and you're going to plug it in and the kids are going to follow along with the motions on the screen, that's a win. And I say too, with preschoolers, your middle school and high school students are the best leaders. They have so much energy and they love to do it. And when all they need to do is stand up there and do the motions along with the video on the screen. And then the preschoolers think those student leaders are the coolest.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just a great way to set up the environment. But you're right. Just start with one thing and just start something, because we know that preschool is so important that just give it a shot. Give something a try.
Yeah. Well, this has been really helpful. I enjoyed diving deep on preschool and first look curriculum and how does that work and the intentionality of that, but even environments and all of that. How can people connect with you if they have any questions? And I know if they use Orange, they probably have their own Orange specialist, but maybe they don't or whatever, but how can they connect with you?
Hey, they can totally connect via email. You can find me at bcompton@rethinkgroup.org. Totally love to hear from leaders, and I love to learn and grow just as much as we all can from each other. And on Facebook, we have our own First Look Partners page where we talk a lot, share ideas, come up with solutions to anything in preschool ministry, not just curriculum based. And then also on Facebook with our Orange Kids page. So, just find me and connect, because I love to talk preschool ministry and I love to see churches set up preschool well.
Awesome. Well, Brittany, thanks for coming on the podcast and for sharing with us.
Thanks a bunch. Have a great night.
Well, it was good to have Brittany on the podcast. I feel like we need to talk a little bit more about preschool ministry on here. It's a unique podcast for sure, because we talk about everything from, nursery all the way up through high school and into college, and then topics that span all of those age groups. But I'm glad we had Brittany on to talk more about that. Here's some action items I think you can take coming out of this interview. One is to evaluate your plan for toddlers, twos, like that younger early childhood age group. What are you doing for them? Is there more that you could do? Is there curriculum, even pieces that you could work into rooms like that? And Orange obviously provides that, but maybe whatever curriculum you use, maybe you get a team together, some volunteers, maybe some parents, and brainstorm what could we do that we're not currently doing in this room. Another action step, and this is a very big deal, I understand, is that you could move from biweekly or monthly to weekly volunteers. Just like Brittany talked about, it's so important to have that impression and build trust week after week after week in those rooms, but it is hard to recruit for that. And I am trying to work on a course with Ministry Boost to help you, because I get that question all the time. How do I, get volunteers to go from a low frequency commitment, once a month, to a higher frequency commitment, like once a week? And there is kind of a way I recommend to do that. And so I'm hoping to put a course together for that and make that super affordable, maybe even get away for free, because I know that's one of the biggest challenges is making that move. But if you make that move and you do it, you don't need 100% of your volunteers to make it, right? Because if they're going to serve every week, you only need a fourth of them, to have the same number as you used to have when they served every 4 weeks. Like if you got 80 volunteers, but only, 20 of them show up every week to serve because they serve once a month, you only need 20 of them to serve weekly to still have the same number. And most of the time when I see people make that move, they do lose volunteers. I don't want to hide that or overlook that. People don't make that commitment, but they get more than they need. And in a sense, they actually grow the team, which is great. A third action step you can take is to download the job descriptions I'm going to share with you in the email. So our preschool ministry volunteer job descriptions. Sign up to get the email, and then you'll be able to download those, tweak them, change them, improve them, and then use them in your ministry to give clarity to your volunteers. You can get all the show notes at nickblevins.com/episode 152. Don't forget, we have that webinar this Thursday at ministryboost.org/webinars. Hope this was helpful. I hope it helps you in your preschool ministry, and I hope you have a great week. I'll catch you next time on the Family Ministry Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.